Now let's go ahead and get a tour of this thing.
Okay, so we're in the cockpit of the CL215 here today at Oshkosh, and I'll run you through some of the things that are interesting and different about this aircraft compared to other aircraft. Because it is an amphibious aircraft, we have a configuration system. We have to make the changes for land or sea, and that resets what the power levers do with the gear horn when we close the power levers to land. If we're selected to sea and the gear is down and we close the power levers, the gear horn will go off. If we're selected to land, we close the power levers and the gear's up, the gear horn will go off.
Does it prompt you to select land or sea?
It's a horn.
The pilot's got to be smart enough to...
It's a dumb system. Well, the pilot's got to be smart enough to remember what to select. Pretty standard transport category, radial engine stuff here.
Yeah, it's really standard. There's a lot of transport category radial engines flying around in 2019.
Well, you got, I guess these are R2800 CA3s. They're similar to a CB16 as found on a DC6. They have a BMEP torque metering system, and we set power with manifold pressure. It's a supercharged engine, so we use 53.5 inches of boost for takeoff and 2,800 RPM.
What's your max continuous power setting?
NITO is 46.5. 46.5 right at the edge of the green there.
Gotcha.
And 2,600 RPM.
Awesome.
Yep. And then, so one of the things about radial engines and fighting fires is sometimes you can be going to takeoff power every minute and a half. Mm-hmm. So you really got to babysit your temperatures. So you'll see on the engines there's giant cowl flaps that go all the way around the engine. Each one is the size of a buffet dinner plate. And so the pilot not flying is often constantly rowing the cowl flaps open and closed to keep the head temps, so that head temps aren't going like this all the time, because that makes cracks in your cylinders. Oil pressure, oil temperature is important. We got giant oil coolers. The oil gets very hot because we're slow and it's hot down at where we're flying. Carb air temp is typically more for ferry flights. We'll be using that. We don't have to worry about that too much on forest fires. So
carb icing is a concern, or?
No, not really. We use the carb air temp more for not over boosting the engine. So I said NITO is 46.5. Well, if you're flying and it's 20 degrees below ISA, you're supposed to knock off inches of boost to that, right? However, if you apply carb air temp to 20 or ISA, you can maintain.
So to explain this a little bit more here, it's a dry carburetor system on this airplane, a massive 45-pound carburetor, and carb heat actually helps to decrease engine power, raising the intake air temperature closer to ISA, right? So say it's supposed to be 15 degrees Celsius, and it's a very cold day, well, the engine would actually be getting a lot more air and be able to produce a lot more power. So you could either decrease manifold pressure per some mathematical equation because the temperature is below ISA, or you could just increase your intake air temperature back towards ISA, and then you don't have to do any math, and you can use those set numbers that you remember a lot more easily. So that's when you're most likely to be using the carb heat, is actually when you want the engine to produce a little bit less power and raise that intake air temperature closer towards ISA, or about 15 degrees Celsius. Now, big radial engines like these do burn oil, and so here on this airplane, there are oil quantity gauges, and you want to have about at least 15 gallons of oil per side, right? That's quite a bit of oil, and these engines might burn up to a gallon an hour when you're in firefighting operations, when you're constantly going to take off power every minute or two there on the airplane. We'll let Miles go ahead and fill you in on the rest of the stuff and sort of the procedure of going ahead and actually setting up to scoop off the water now that F-22 is flown overhead and is done making noise for us.
We want to touch down at about 75 knots. As soon as we touch down, the probes hook. The airplane slows down quite a bit.
Is there much bite just from the hull friction, or
no? No, it's totally different. If you're just doing touch and goes and you have the probes up, there's no bite. It's really smooth. It's just like a float plane. That's about the same amount of deceleration. When the probes are down, it's like somebody threw the anchor out. So you got to check that with back elevator and get the takeoff power up right away.
Awesome.
You're going to see your water quantity going up. About 9-10 seconds, we're going to fill to full. I'm going to call for the probes to go up again. Going to accelerate on the water to 78 knots, where we're going to unstick. Going to take some of the drag off and go to flaps 10.
Instant promotions,
and when we hit 91 knots, we're going to arm the doors. We're going to arm the doors.
Sorry.
And we are going to call for power 1. and we're gonna climb out at 105 knots.
Awesome. When you raise the probes, is it kind of like that feeling of unsticking from the water? You just get that massive acceleration, or?
You don't get massive acceleration. You can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel. You have to release the back pressure you had on the wheel. Yeah, nothing's this is the piston one. The turbine one has quite a bit more power, so you'll feel it a lot more in that aircraft.
Is it noticeable? I mean, can you get porpoising? Say like you bring the probes up, will it start to porpoise if you hold that back pressure in there? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. This aircraft has a really small sweet spot on the water.
Yeah.
Very heavy on the controls.
Your controls are all cables and pulleys.
There's no
power
boost.
assist of any sort.
There's no boost. A lot of tanker pilots start working out in the gym a couple months before season just to get in better shape and get their shoulders working. And so porpoising, I mean, it's easy to fix the problem. You just pull a little more back pressure and hold it. When you're porpoising, it's really easy to get in the motion where you're moving the wheel because you're moving as well.
Yeah, you get into pilot-induced oscillation.
Generally, got to lock the wheel and hold it there, and the porpoising stops right away.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, if you guys have any more questions on specifics, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Maybe Miles will get back to you on those. But more importantly, let's go watch the water bomber do its thing.
22, thank you, tanker flight, clear for takeoff, 18 right. Clear for takeoff, 18 right, tanker flight.
Ready? You got it? Pull. I got it.
B formation.
Roger that.
So in just under 60 seconds after dropping, Miles and the crew were already back out on the lake picking up a whole nother load of water, and less than 90 seconds after picking up the water, they were back on the drop site dropping again. So really impressive how quickly you can deliver water from the lake to the fire, and as long as the lake is near the fire, it happens pretty rapidly. A lot of cycles, really fast, almost 12,000 pounds of water every single drop. So tons of water hitting right on target. Makes the airplane pretty worthwhile. I mean, it does have a price tag of over $40 million for a brand new one, and I believe about 20-some million for a used overhauled one that's a piston version. But it seems pretty worthwhile if you want to get a lot of water onto a fire really, really quickly.
F291, good drop, good drop. And going flat load and okay, here's traveling. Check. I'll come back in one last overhead. All tanker assets, you are cleared to RTV at this time. Local.
How far is that? Like 3,000 feet? Yeah. Yeah, it's about halfway.
So that is the short version of how you fly a CL215 water bomber. Big thanks to Miles, Devin, and Jim over there for setting all this up and let's throw some cameras on the airplane. If you have any questions about the water bomber, leave them in the comments below. We will do our best to answer them. And remember, if you can't fly every day, then fly 8mikealpha.com. We will see y'all next time.